Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as his ship moved through empty space. The stars here looked different from Earth's sky. They were older, colder, and somehow sadder. His ship, the UES Pathfinder, had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this forgotten corner of the galaxy. "Captain, we're picking up something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Walsh from her station. She was the ship's chief engineer, a smart woman who could fix anything that broke. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she studied the readings. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "There's a structure out there. It's old, really old, maybe 1,000 years or more, but it's still giving off power, readings." Lisa looked up at him with curious eyes. "Want to take a look?" "Set course for it," Jake ordered. He was always interested in old things. In his 20 years of space travel, he had learned that old usually meant important. The ship changed direction and moved toward the object. As they got closer, the view screen showed them something amazing. It was a space station, but not like any they had seen before. It was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a soft blue light. "Tony, what do you make of those symbols?" Jake asked his science officer. Tony Rivera was a young man who loved puzzles. He spent most of his free time studying alien languages and old cultures. He stared at the screen for a long moment before shaking his head. "I've never seen anything like them, Captain. The patterns are complex, but they feel familiar somehow." "Amy, try to contact them," Jake said to his communications officer. Amy Carter was good with languages too, but in a different way. She could make anyone understand her, even aliens who had never met humans before. She worked at her controls for several minutes before looking up. "There's someone there, Captain, just one life sign. They're very weak." Jake made his decision quickly. "Lisa, take us in for docking. Tony, prepare the medical bay. Amy, keep trying to talk to them." The docking took an hour. The alien station systems were so different from human technology that Lisa had to be very careful. But finally, they heard the soft hiss of airlocks connecting. Jake put on his environmental suit and walked through the airlock into the alien station. The air inside was breathable, but it smelled old and sad. The lights were dim and everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. He found the alien in what looked like a control room. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. It wore robes that might have been beautiful once, but now they were faded and torn. The alien was sitting in a chair that seemed to be keeping it alive with tubes and wires. "Hello," Jake said softly. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of Earth." The alien's eyes opened slowly. When it spoke, its voice was like music, but very tired music. "Earth," it said. "Yes, I know of Earth. I am Zektar, last of the Velnari." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories of the Velnari. They were supposed to be one of the oldest and wisest races in the galaxy. But those were just stories. No one had seen a Velnari in hundreds of years. "You're really Velnari?" Jake asked. Zektar nodded slowly. "The last. My people are gone. Our worlds are gone. I remain here only because I cannot bring myself to die." Jake sat down on the floor next to the alien's chair. Something about Zektar made him feel like he was in the presence of someone very important. "How long have you been alone?" 50 of your years, Zektar said. "I watch the stars and remember what was." "Why don't you tell me about it?" Jake said. He had learned that sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was just listen. Zektar was quiet for a long time. Then he began to speak. "Long ago, when your people were still bound to one world, we watched you. The Velnari have always watched younger races, hoping to guide them away from the mistakes we made." Jake listened carefully. This was not what he had expected to find on a routine survey mission. "Your Earth was in danger," Zektar continued. "A great rock from space, what you call an asteroid, was coming to destroy all life on your world. Your people did not know. They could not know. Their technology was not advanced enough to see it coming." Jake's heart began to beat faster. "What did you do?" "We could not let your species die. You showed such promise, such hope. So we acted. We changed the asteroid's path. We made it miss your world by just enough. Zektar's eyes seemed to glow a little brighter, but that was not all. There was more? Much more. Over the centuries, we guided your technology. When your scientists were close to breakthroughs that would help your species survive, we gave them small hints. When disasters threatened your world, we helped in ways you never knew. We wanted your people to reach the stars safely. Jake sat in stunned silence. Everything he thought he knew about human history was suddenly different. Why? Why would you do all that for us? Zektar smiled, and for a moment he looked less tired. Because hope is precious. Because life is sacred. Because someone must help the younger races as others once helped us. And now you're alone, Jake said quietly. Yes. My homeworld was consumed by our dying sun 50 years ago. The few survivors, scattered across the galaxy, and I have lost contact with them all. I am the last keeper of our knowledge, the last witness to our greatness. Jake stood up. Something was building inside him, something that felt like duty and honor and gratitude all mixed together. What can I do? How can I help you? Zektar looked at him with surprise. You would help me, even though I am nothing but an old alien, waiting to die? You saved my entire species, Jake said firmly. You saved Earth. You saved all of us. Of course I'll help you. Zektar was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke very softly. There is something. One last thing I would like to see before I die. My homeworld is gone, but I have the coordinates where it used to be. I would like to go there one more time. I would like to see the space where my people's greatest achievement once stood. The crystal gardens of Veltar Prime. Jake didn't hesitate. Consider it done. As the words left his mouth, Jake had no idea what he had just promised. He didn't know that those 3 simple words would change everything. He didn't know that he had just activated something that would shake the entire galaxy. All he knew was that humanity owed this alien a debt that could never truly be repaid. But they were going to try anyway. Jake stared at the star charts on his screen and felt his heart sink. The coordinates Zektar had given them led to a place that no longer existed. Where the Velnari homeworld once orbited, there was now only death and destruction. Captain, Tony said from his science station, I've checked the records 3 times. That star went supernova 50 years ago. The explosion would have destroyed everything within 20 light years. Lisa looked up from her engineering console. The radiation levels in that area are still deadly. Even our best shields couldn't protect us for more than a few minutes. Jake rubbed his forehead. He had promised Zektar they would take him to see his homeworld one last time. But how could they take him to a place that had been turned into a cloud of deadly gas and twisted space? There has to be a way, Jake said. Amy turned in her chair. Captain, maybe we should explain to Zektar that it's impossible. He's been alone for 50 years. He might not know what happened to his star. He knows, Jake said quietly. He told me his world was consumed by their dying sun. He knows there's nothing left, but he still wants to go there. The bridge was quiet for a moment, then Lisa spoke up. Sir, with respect, what you're asking is suicide. That whole region is a death trap. The space itself is broken there. Time moves wrong. Gravity does things that shouldn't be possible. Jake looked at each of his crew members. They were good people, and they trusted him. But he could see the fear in their eyes. What he was thinking about doing went against everything they had learned about space travel. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Jake said. Amy worked at her controls. You're connected, Captain. Admiral Karen Bell's face appeared on the main screen. She was a tough woman who had been in space longer than anyone Jake knew. Her gray hair was pulled back tight and her blue eyes were sharp as lasers. Captain Morrison, she said, what's your status? Admiral, I need to make a request that's going to sound crazy. Admiral Bell leaned back in her chair. I'm listening. Jake took a deep breath and told her everything. He explained about finding Zektar, about learning what the Velnari had done for humanity, and about the promise he had made. When he finished, Admiral Bell was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking, weighing the risks against what was right. "Captain," she finally said, "are you telling me that this alien species saved Earth from destruction? That they guided our entire development as a spacefaring race?" "Yes, ma'am. Without them, we would all be dead. Earth would be a dead rock floating in space." Admiral Bell nodded slowly. "And this Zektar is the last of his kind?" "As far as we know, yes." The Admiral stood up and walked to her window. Jake could see Earth spinning slowly behind her. After a long moment, she turned back to the screen. "We owe them everything," she said. "Figure it out." "Ma'am?" "You heard me, Captain. We owe them everything we are, everything we have, everything we will ever be. If the last of the Velnari wants to see his homeworld one more time, then by God, we're going to make it happen. I don't care if it's impossible. Humans don't believe in impossible when honor is at stake." Jake felt a surge of pride. This was why he served in the Earth Fleet. This was what made humanity special. "What do you need?" Admiral Bell asked. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was already pulling up technical specifications. Tony was researching the effects of supernova radiation. Amy was calculating travel times. His people were ready to do the impossible. "I need scientists," Jake said. "The best we have. I need engineers who think outside the box. I need ships that can survive in hell itself." "Done. I'm putting Dr. Ryan Hughes in charge of the science team. He's the one who figured out how to make shields work in black hole gravity. If anyone can design protection against supernova radiation, it's him." Jake knew Dr. Hughes by reputation. The man was brilliant, but more importantly, he never gave up on a problem. "I'm also sending you Samantha Price," the Admiral continued. "She's our best engineer. If there's a way to make a ship survive where space itself is broken, she'll find it." "Thank you, Admiral." "Don't thank me yet, Captain. This is going to be the most dangerous mission in human history. But if we succeed, it will also be the most important." The connection ended and Jake turned to his crew. "Well, you heard the Admiral. We're going to do the impossible." Over the next few days, Jake watched in amazement as humanity mobilized. Ships began arriving at their location, bringing the best minds Earth had to offer. The science vessel UES Discovery arrived first, carrying Dr. Hughes and his team. Then came the engineering ship UES Builder with Samantha Price and her specialists. But that was just the beginning. More ships kept coming. Research vessels, supply ships, even military escorts. Within a week, Jake found himself in command of a small fleet. Dr. Hughes called a meeting to discuss their options. Jake, Lisa, Tony, Amy, and the other ship captains gathered in the Discovery's main conference room. "The problem is simple to state," Dr. Hughes began. "We need to take living beings into an area of space where the laws of physics have gone insane. The radiation alone should kill us instantly. The gravity field should tear our ships apart, and the time distortion should turn us all into paste. So what's your solution?" asked Captain Beth Murphy of the UES Builder. Dr. Hughes smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who enjoyed solving impossible problems. "We're going to cheat," he said. He activated a holographic display showing their proposed ship modifications. "We're going to wrap our ships in artificial space. We'll create bubbles of normal physics around each vessel. The radiation can't hurt us if it never touches us. The gravity can't crush us if we're technically not even there." Samantha Price stood up. "And I'm working on temporal stabilizers. If we can lock our ships into normal time, the time distortion can't affect us either." Jake looked at the plans. They were insane. They were also brilliant. "How long do you need?" "Give us a month," Dr. Hughes said. "Maybe 6 weeks." "You have it." As the meeting broke up, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Captain Murphy, a woman who had been in space almost as long as Admiral Bell. "Jake," she said quietly, "you know this is crazy, right?" "Yeah," Jake replied. "But it's the right kind of crazy." The kind that makes legends, Jake thought, about Zektar, alone on his ancient station waiting to see his home one last time. He thought about Earth, safe and green because aliens he had never met decided to help his species survive. The kind that pays debts, he said. Captain Murphy nodded. Then let's make history. Over the following weeks, Jake watched his crew and the other humans work miracles. They designed new technologies in days that should have taken years to develop. They solved problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. They took the word impossible and threw it in the trash. And through it all, Jake visited Zektar every day. The old alien grew stronger as if hope itself was healing him. Soon he would see his homeworld again. Even if that homeworld was now a cloud of deadly gas and broken space-time, humans were going to make it happen. Because that's what humans did when they owed someone a favor. 6 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at what humanity had built. The UES Pathfinder now looked nothing like the simple exploration vessel it had been. Strange new equipment covered its hull. Glowing energy fields surrounded it like a second skin. The ship hummed with power that felt almost alive. "All systems are ready, Captain," Lisa reported from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. The fleet around them had grown too. 12 ships now traveled together, each one modified with the impossible technology that Dr. Hughes and his team had created. The UES Builder carried massive construction equipment. The UES Discovery was packed with scientific instruments. Support. Ships carried supplies and backup systems. "Dr. Hughes, report," Jake said into his communicator. The scientist's voice came back crackling with energy. "All ships are generating stable space bubbles, Captain. The artificial physics fields are holding steady. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Samantha, how are the temporal stabilizers?" "Working perfectly," came the engineer's reply. "Time is locked to normal flow around all vessels. We should be immune to the time distortion effects." Jake took a deep breath. "Amy, send word to all ships. We're going in." The fleet moved forward, toward the swirling cloud of death that had once been the Velnari star system. As they got closer, the view screen showed them something that looked like the inside of a nightmare. Colors that shouldn't exist twisted through space. Lightning that wasn't lightning crackled between invisible walls. Reality itself seemed to be having a breakdown. "Radiation levels are off the charts," Tony reported. "But our shields are holding. The artificial space bubbles are working." Jake walked over to where Zektar sat in a special chair they had built for him. The old alien was wearing a human environmental suit modified for his body. His large eyes were fixed on the view screen. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked gently. Zektar nodded. "I have waited 50 years to see home again, even if home is now a cloud of angry gas." The fleet pushed deeper into the deadly nebula. Around them, space did things that made no sense. Gravity pulled in directions that didn't exist. Light bent into impossible shapes. The laws of physics were more like suggestions here. "Captain," Amy called out, "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, though he was learning that strange was normal in this place. "There's something solid in there, something big." Tony worked frantically at his station. "She's right, Captain. There are large objects near the center of the nebula. They're not natural formations." Jake felt his heart speed up. "Can you tell what they are?" "Working on it," Tony said. His fingers flew over his controls. "Captain, this is impossible, but I'm reading structures, buildings. They look like pieces of a planet." Zektar made a sound that might have been a gasp. "The preservation protocols," he whispered. "What?" Jake asked. The old alien's eyes were bright with hope and disbelief. "When our star began to die, our greatest scientists worked on preservation protocols. They were trying to save pieces of our world. But the star exploded before they could finish. I thought they had failed." "They didn't fail," Tony said, his voice full of wonder. "Captain, I'm reading massive chunks of constructed landscape. Parks, buildings, entire city districts. They're held in some kind of stasis field." Jake stared at the screen as they got closer. Through the swirling gases, he could see them. Floating islands of another world, preserved like flowers pressed in a book. Structures that looked like they were made of crystal and light. Gardens that still glowed with soft colors. The crystal gardens, Zektar said softly. They're still there. But as they approached, Jake saw the problem. The preserved pieces of Veltar Prime were scattered across thousands of miles of space. They were broken apart, damaged by 50 years of radiation and gravitational chaos. Some pieces were missing entirely. Others were barely recognizable. It's not enough, Zektar said, and Jake heard the sadness in his voice. I can see pieces of my home, but it's all broken, all scattered. Jake looked at the fragments of an alien world floating in the poisonous clouds. Then he looked at his crew. Lisa was studying her engineering displays. Tony was analyzing the preservation technology. Amy was coordinating with the other ships. No, Jake said firmly. It's not broken. It's just not finished yet. He opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Morrison. Change of mission. We're not just here to show Zektar his homeworld. We're here to rebuild it. There was silence on the communication channels for a moment. Then Dr. Hughes's voice came through and Jake could hear the grin in it. I was hoping you'd say that, Captain. We've been analyzing the preservation fields. We can work with this. What are you thinking, Doctor? We use the builder's construction equipment to gather the pieces. The preservation fields are still active, which means the structures are intact at the quantum level. We can reassemble them. Samantha Price's voice joined the conversation. I've been studying the stasis technology. It's incredible. If we can figure out how it works, we might be able to restore some of the damaged sections. Over the following hours, Jake watched humanity do what humanity did best. They took an impossible situation and made it possible through sheer determination and clever thinking. The UES builder extended massive mechanical arms and began carefully collecting the floating pieces of Veltar Prime. The science ships studied the alien preservation technology and figured out how to repair damaged sections. The support ships provided power and materials, but it wasn't just the humans working. As news of their mission spread through their fleet's communications, something unexpected happened. Other ships began arriving. The first was a Centauri trade vessel whose captain had heard about their mission on the subspace channels. Then came a Rigelian science ship. Then more. Alien species from across the local sector began showing up to watch what the humans were doing. Captain, Amy reported, we have 17 alien vessels maintaining a safe distance. They're asking if they can help. Jake looked at Zektar, who was staring at the view screen in amazement. Piece by piece, his homeworld was being put back together. The crystal gardens were taking shape again, their bioluminescent plants somehow still alive after 50 years in space. Tell them they're welcome to watch, Jake said. But this is humanity's debt to pay. As the days passed, the impossible became routine. The humans rebuilt entire districts of the Velnari capital city. They restored parks where crystalline trees grew in patterns of mathematical beauty. They reassembled libraries containing the knowledge of 1,000,000 years, and through it all, alien ships watched from a safe distance. Jake knew that word of what humanity was doing was spreading across the galaxy. He didn't care. This wasn't about impressing anyone. This was about doing the right thing. On the 5th day, Dr. Hughes made a breakthrough. Captain, we figured out how to enhance the preservation fields. We can create a stable environment around the reconstructed sections. They won't just survive, they'll thrive. Jake smiled as he watched a section of crystalline gardens come back to life, their lights pulsing in patterns that spoke of alien poetry and beauty. How much more time do you need? He asked. Give us 3 more days, Dr. Hughes said. We're going to give Zektar something better than his homeworld. We're going to give him hope. Jake looked at the alien elder, who was crying tears of joy, as he watched his world being reborn from cosmic ashes. Humanity had promised to show him his homeworld one last time. Instead, they were giving it back to him forever. 3 months had passed since Jake first promised to help Zektar. What had started as a simple request to visit the coordinates of a dead world had become something that shook the entire galaxy. Jake stood in the observation deck of the newly built station that surrounded the restored sections of Veltar Prime. Through the transparent walls, He could see crystalline gardens that glowed with soft blue and green light. Spires of living crystal reached toward the stars. Waterfalls of liquid light cascaded between floating islands of restored parkland. It was beautiful beyond words, but Jake knew they had done more than just rebuild a world. They had created something new. "Captain," Dr. Hughes said as he joined Jake at the observation window. "The quantum restoration is complete. Every building, every garden, every piece of art has been restored to its original state. Some sections are actually better than they were before." Jake nodded. Over the past months, the human team had not just put the pieces back together. They had improved them. The crystal gardens now had self-sustaining fusion cores that would keep them alive for thousands of years. The libraries had been expanded with human knowledge storage technology. The residential areas had been equipped with life support systems that could house any species. "What about the ecosystem?" Jake asked. Dr. Helen Ross, the team's lead biologist, looked up from her data pad. "It's thriving. The bioluminescent plants are not only alive, they're spreading. We've managed to recreate the complete ecological chain that once existed on Veltar Prime. The gardens are actually more diverse now than they were originally." Through the window, Jake could see Zektar walking slowly through one of the restored parks. The old alien moved with a strength he hadn't shown in months. Being home, even a rebuilt home, had given him new life. "Captain," Amy's voice came over the communicator. "You need to see this. We've got incoming ships." Jake made his way to the command center. On the main screen, he could see dozens of vessels approaching, but these weren't human ships. "What are we looking at?" Jake asked. "Ships from the Altarian Council," Amy replied. "Also vessels from the Rigel Federation, the Centauri Alliance, and at least 6 other major powers. They're requesting permission to approach." Jake frowned. The Altarian Council was one of the oldest political bodies in the galaxy. They didn't travel anywhere without a very good reason. "Let them come," Jake said. "But keep our defense systems ready." An hour later, Jake found himself in what had once been the Great Hall of the Velnari Capitol building. The humans had restored it perfectly, down to the intricate carvings that told the story of Velnari history. Now it was filled with alien dignitaries from across the galaxy. Ambassador Velcara of the Altarian Council was an impressive figure. Her species was tall and elegant, with silver skin that reflected light like mirrors. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Captain Morrison," she said, "what you have accomplished here defies all logic and precedent." "We just kept a promise," Jake replied simply. "You have rebuilt an entire world from cosmic debris," said Ambassador Krita of the Rigel Federation. His species looked like walking trees, and his voice rustled like leaves in the wind. "You have spent resources that could have built 100 colonies, all for one alien's dying wish." Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked amazed, others looked confused, a few looked frightened. "That's right," Jake said. "We did all that for one person's wish, because that one person's people saved our entire species." Ambassador Velcara stepped forward. "Do you understand what this means? What you have proven about humanity?" "It means we pay our debts," Jake said. "It means much more than that." "Ambassador," Velcara replied, "it means that when humanity considers someone a friend, you will move heaven and earth to help them. It means that humanity's concept of loyalty and honor operates on a scale that we have never seen before." Ambassador Krita rustled his leaves in what Jake had learned was a sign of deep thought. "Captain, there are other species in the galaxy who face extinction. Other worlds that have been lost. Other peoples who need help that seems impossible to give." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He was beginning to understand where this conversation was going. "Are you asking for our help?" Jake asked. "The Thylarian home system is dying," Ambassador Velcara said quietly. "Their star is going cold. In 50 years, their world will be a frozen wasteland. They have asked the Galactic Council for help, but the resources needed to relocate an entire species across the galaxy are beyond what any one government can provide." The Kelnari lost their homeworld to a plague that turned their soil toxic, added Ambassador Krita. They live in exile on ships and stations, dreaming of land they can never touch again. The Vorthan race is down to less than 1,000 individuals, said another ambassador. Their genetic diversity is so low that they face extinction within a generation unless something is done. Jake looked at each alien in turn. They were all watching him with expressions of hope and desperation. Word of what humanity had done, for Zektar had spread across the galaxy, and now everyone with an impossible problem was coming to them. "Captain," Amy whispered in his ear, "there are more ships arriving. Lots more." Jake looked out through the Great Hall's crystal windows. The space around the restored Veltar sanctuary was filling with ships from dozens of different species. They were all coming to see what humanity had built, and to ask for their own miracles. At that moment, Zektar entered the hall. The old Velnari moved slowly, but with dignity. The alien ambassadors fell silent as he approached. "My friends," Zektar said, his musical voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "I asked Captain Morrison for a simple thing. I asked to see my homeworld one last time before I died." He gestured toward the crystal windows and the glowing gardens beyond. "Instead, he gave me my homeworld back. He gave me my people's legacy restored and protected. He gave me hope where I had none." Zektar turned to look at Jake. "But more than that, he gave me something I thought was lost forever." "What's that?" Jake asked. "He gave me my people back." Jake frowned. "I don't understand." Zektar smiled, and his large eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "3 other Velnari survived the destruction of our worlds. I thought they were dead, lost in the chaos of our exile. But while your people were rebuilding my home, I accessed the restored archives. I found records, communications, coordinates." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "They're alive." "They are alive, and they are coming home," Zektar said. "Elder Thekra sends word that she will arrive within the week. Scholar Nivana has been traveling for months to reach us. Engineer Kolomar was closer than I dared hope." The alien ambassadors stirred with excitement. Jake realized that what had started as an impossible mission to visit a dead world had become something even more miraculous. They hadn't just rebuilt Feltar Prime. They had brought a species back from the edge of extinction. "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Velkara said softly, "now do you understand what you have done?" Jake looked around the restored hall, filled with alien diplomats who had come to witness a miracle. He thought about the growing fleet of ships outside, each carrying desperate people hoping for their own impossible salvation. "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "I think I'm starting to." He opened his communicator to contact Admiral Bell. Humanity was about to get very busy. When word got out that they had not just restored a dead world, but reunited a scattered species, every impossible problem in the galaxy would end up on their doorstep. But as Jake looked at Zektar's joyful face and the hope in the eyes of the alien ambassadors, he realized he didn't mind. This was what humanity was for. This was why they had been saved all those centuries ago, to save others in return. 1 year later, Jake stood in the same great hall where the alien ambassadors had first come to ask for miracles. But now the hall looked different. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing dozens of ongoing human projects across the galaxy. Each display represented another impossible mission that humanity had taken on. The Thylarian relocation project was ahead of schedule. Human engineers had figured out how to move an entire star system's worth of people and infrastructure to a new home. The Kelnari soil restoration program was working so well that their homeworld was now more fertile than it had been before the plague. The Vorthan Genetic Diversity Project had grown their population to over 3,000 healthy individuals. Jake watched the displays with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. What had started as one promise to one alien had become humanity's new purpose in the galaxy. They were now known as the species that made impossible things happen. "Captain," Lisa said as she joined him. She now wore the uniform of chief engineer for the entire Impossible Missions Division, a new branch of Earth's military that specialized in projects no one else would attempt. "The new ships are ready for launch." Jake nodded. The UES Gratitude was the largest vessel humanity had ever built. It was designed specifically for impossible missions, equipped with every piece of miraculous technology they had developed over the past year. It would be Jake's new command leading a fleet of ships dedicated to helping other species with problems that seemed unsolvable. "How many crews have volunteered?" Jake asked. "All of them," Lisa replied with a grin. "We had to turn people away. Everyone wants to be part of the impossible missions." Through the crystal windows, Jake could see the Veltar sanctuary as it existed now. What had once been a few restored gardens had grown into a thriving community. The 4 surviving Velnari had been reunited, and they had established a new center of learning and culture. Students from dozens of species came to study in the libraries that held the wisdom of the ancient Velnari civilization. But more than that, the sanctuary had become a symbol. It was proof that death was not always final, that extinction could be reversed, that the impossible was just another word for something humans hadn't figured out yet. "Captain Morrison," a familiar musical voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Zektar approaching. The old Velnari looked healthier and stronger than Jake had ever seen him. Being reunited with his people and seeing his culture preserved had given him new life. "Zektar," Jake said warmly. "How are the new students working out?" "Wonderfully," Zektar replied. "Elder Thekra is teaching them the old meditation techniques. Scholar Nivana has them fascinated with our historical records. Engineer Kolmar is showing them technologies we thought were lost forever." Jake smiled. The Velnari had thrown themselves into their new role as teachers and guardians of ancient knowledge. They were sharing their wisdom with any species that wanted to learn, ensuring that their culture would never die again. "And how is the new project coming along?" Jake asked. Zektar's eyes brightened. "The archive of lost civilizations grows every day. We have already cataloged the cultures of 17 extinct species. When your people finish restoring the Altanian ruins next month, we will add their knowledge as well." That was humanity's latest impossible project. They were not just helping living species anymore. They were bringing dead civilizations back from oblivion, recovering their art, their science, their stories, and preserving them for future generations. "Captain," Amy's voice came over the communicator. "Admiral Bell is ready for the ceremony." Jake nodded. Today was the official launch of the Impossible Missions Division. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness it. The ceremony was held in the main docking bay of the orbital station that now surrounded the Veltar sanctuary. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species filled the space. Jake could see faces he recognized from the various projects humanity had undertaken. Thylarian families who now had a new home. Kelnari farmers who could work their ancestral soil again. Fourth-hand children who would grow up in a species with a future. Admiral Bell stood at the podium, her voice carrying across the bay through universal translators. 1 year ago, Captain Morrison made a simple promise to an alien who had helped our species survive. That promise led us to rebuild a dead world, reunite a scattered people, and discover our true purpose in the galaxy. She gestured toward the UES Gratitude, floating majestically in the center of the bay. The ship was beautiful in its simplicity, built for function rather than show, but impressive in its sheer scale and obvious capability. Today, we formally established the Impossible Missions Division. Its purpose is simple. When other species face challenges that seem insurmountable, when civilizations face extinction, when hope itself seems lost, humanity will be there. The crowd erupted in cheers and sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Jake felt a swell of emotion as he realized how far they had come. Admiral Bell continued, "But we must remember why we do this. We do it because once, long ago, another species looked at a young and struggling humanity and decided to help. They saved us when we could not save ourselves. Now it is our turn to be the ones who help." Ambassador Velkara of the Altarian Council stepped forward. In her hands was a crystal tablet covered with writing in hundreds of different languages. "On behalf of the galactic community," she said, "we present this treaty of friendship and cooperation. Every signatory species pledges to support humanity's impossible missions, not with ships or weapons, but with knowledge, resources, and the understanding that what you do for all of us." Jake looked at the tablet and saw signatures from species across the galaxy. Even races that had been enemies for centuries had signed together, united in their respect for what humanity was trying to accomplish. Captain Morrison, Admiral Bell, called out, "Would you like to say something before you take command of the Gratitude?" Jake walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd of alien faces. A year ago, he had been a simple exploration captain on a routine survey mission. Now he was about to lead humanity's most ambitious venture into the unknown. "I'm not good with speeches," Jake began, and scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. "But I want to say something about promises." He looked toward where Zektar stood with his fellow Velnari. "When I promised to help Zektar see his homeworld one last time, I had no idea what that promise would lead to. I didn't know we would rebuild a dead world, reunite a species, or change the way the galaxy thinks about what's possible." Jake paused and looked around the bay at all the alien faces watching him. "But I've learned something important this year. When you make a promise to help someone, you don't get to decide how big that help becomes. You don't get to say this is enough, when there's still more you can do. And you definitely don't get to give up just because everyone says it's impossible." He gestured toward the UES Gratitude. "So here's humanity's new promise to the galaxy. When you have a problem that can't be solved, when you face a challenge that seems impossible, when you need help that no one else can give, come find us. We'll figure it out." The crowd erupted in cheers again, but Jake held up his hand for quiet. "But remember this," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the bay. "When humanity owes you a favor, prepare for the impossible, because we don't just keep our promises. We exceed them in ways that will surprise us all." As Jake walked toward his new ship, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Zektar, tears of joy flowing down his ancient face. "Thank you," the Velnari said simply. "Thank you for saving Earth all those years ago," Jake replied. Zektar smiled. "I think we are even now." Jake looked around at the thriving sanctuary, the diverse crowd of beings working together, and the massive ship that would carry humanity's promise to the stars. "No," he said with a grin. "I think we're just getting started."